So I'm joined today all the way from London by Charlie. Charlie Syme, welcome.
Thanks, Emma. It's great to be chatting to you today.
You are my first international guest. I feel this
What
is
an honor.
I know this is an important day.
Yeah, nice and early here in London for your
I know
afternoon.
you're doing well. Hopefully you've had the obligatory coffee.
I have.
You've just passed a pretty monumental milestone. Just gone past your first anniversary of your new business, Pigface Marketing. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm very keen to talk about that, and I've got quite a lot of things that I want to ask you about that, but thought it might be useful to kind of go back to the beginning because, obviously you've been a marketer all your career, but have only quite recently started working for yourself. I'd be interested to hear the journey and hear the story of how that came to be.
Yeah. It's something I've been reflecting on recently, just with this milestone and how I got here. And there's, I guess, a few kind of key career drivers that shape my story. In some respects, I fell into marketing. I was lucky enough to do one of those graduate programs where they train you in various different areas. I got a graduate role at RACV back in the beginning, and I did 6 months in HR doing recruitment, and I did 6 months in an analyst role in a call center, and I did 6 months in marketing. And the 6 months in marketing was the final one. I was like, that's it. That's the one. That's the one I like. That's what I'll do. And I guess it suited me in terms of I was business, but maybe leaning a bit more creative and didn't love the spreadsheets as much as I needed to be an analyst. So from there it was marketing, but I really probably the next big shift, and that was a pretty career defining shift, was towards some sort of purpose. I wanted my work to mean something, and that led me to the charitable sector, which I've always sort of felt that's where I grew up professionally. Went to Oxfam, which was a really career defining role. And, you know, uh, when I left, my boss was very kind to do some numbers. And in my farewell speech, he said, Charlie, you raised $50 million for this organization. And that
That's
was
huge.
just a phenomenal thing to reflect upon, real impact. So purpose from then on really became a big part of, I guess, what I did in the sense that I needed it. I needed my work to mean something, but also, well, it's an interesting reflection on marketing. It's like it's stuck, the Oxfam experience. People still come up to me and say, do you still work at Oxfam? So it's something that obviously like I made part of my personal story. And since then, my career's gone in some interesting directions. I guess there was the birth and the business for purpose movement. So a sort of intersection of purpose with commercially focused businesses. So I spent some time with B Lab and the B Corp movement, and then headed into the startup world. And that's where the idea for Pigface started to emerge, because all businesses need to do marketing, but it did occur to me with some of these very bootstrapped startups, do they need 5 days a week? And honestly, in some respects, they probably did, but then there's the seniority question. So do they need a senior marketer 5 days a week, or could they maybe do with a senior marketer 1 day a week to sort of work on that strategy level, and then a junior marketer to do the day to day? And then, whilst I'm having this idea of fractional CMO, fractional chief marketing officer, started to actually enter the marketplace. And so, yeah, when I started Pigface, that's what I was pitching for. It was this pitch to largely small businesses of a senior marketing resource at a scale you can afford. So it was a bit of a gamble. I threw it out to the market and said, What do you guys think?" And thankfully, it seems that it's found a home, in that there are a lot of businesses that go, "Yeah, I do need that lots of experience, but not on that huge salary."
It makes perfect sense, and I think it's kind of those, as the best solutions often are, it's one of those win-win sort of solutions where both sides are actually getting something really, really valuable from it. And as you say, I think you can be a startup or a smaller business, an SME, and still have access to really high level, high quality strategic thinking, which you probably wouldn't be able to afford or access on a full time kind of ongoing basis. And I'd imagine as well for the person doing it, you get diversity, you get to work on different things. You perhaps don't get so bogged down in some of the day-to-day kind of tactical execution stuff, which may or may not be quite so interesting to you. So yeah, I think it's a really smart solution. Is it something that you'd had in your mind for a while? Were you kind of working towards that for a while, or did it kind of all come together quite quickly?
Yeah, look, definitely a while, and probably a side of this story that I haven't really shared much is that I actually did try try it once earlier, about 5 years earlier. Um, Looking back, I think even I wasn't super confident in it, in that like I did it. I went freelance. I started out there meeting, trying to generate clients, and it just didn't really work. That's the hard truth, and that's something I had to accept. I just I wasn't confident in a pitch. I could tell they weren't fully confident in me. And so it was a bit of a rough experience in that I had to go, this isn't working. I need to go back into employment. And 5 years later, I was like very nervous to do it again
Mm.
because I was like, what if it doesn't work again? But had to back that 5 years of additional experience and additional thinking would be would be the thing that would get me over the line. And yeah, it the hypothesis was correct. I didn't have the clout 5 years earlier that I have now, and that's been a really interesting thing to reflect on. Of like, go again, you know.
It's so interesting, isn't it? Because I mean, I think like anything, you learn so much from the experience of having done that. And obviously you hope that it works the first time, but even if it doesn't, you take away learnings from that that you can then put into the second version, the 2.0 version. And as you say, 5 years is actually a long time. And I'd imagine you think about all the work that you would have done in that 5 years, and you know, professionally you grow so much in 5 years to then kind of come back the second time. And I have to say though, really brave to go to do it again. Did it feel nerve-wracking when you were there at the starting gates the second time?
Oh, enormously nerve wracking.
Mm.
I actually was probably planning it for quite a few months, and I was just sort of waiting for a milestone. I was thinking, well, maybe at the start of the calendar year. Some of the advice, you seek loads of advice when going on a big career shift like this. Some of the advice was see if you can get that first client in hand before you launch. Where the launch can be at any point. Um, which is a cool idea, but it's kinda hard to get, if you're marketing
Practically,
yourself in
yeah.
secret.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, look, I was really apprehensive. The timelines kept shifting, and then the universe intervened, and I actually got made redundant from the role I was in, which it was first time in my career. It was a rough experience in some ways, but it felt like that, okay, it's come together. You've got a little bit of a push that you needed, that you actually wanted, and now you've got to take that opportunity. After getting the redundancy from the role I was in, my self-talk shifted to, you have no excuses now. You got to go. So yeah, it helped. It helped. You've got to roll with whatever comes your way.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think it's a really might seem a strange thing to say, but I think and I've been through it myself, I've been made redundant too, that I think sometimes redundancy can actually be whilst difficult, actually a very positive experience, because I've spoken to so many people over the years who, off the back of a redundancy, have made a significant change, and one that they had wanted to do for some time. But for whatever reason, as you said before, the voice in your head, or I'm not sure I can do it, or, all the excuses, all the reasons that we're good at giving ourselves. And sometimes when it's completely taken out of your hands like that, it is the little nudge that you need to kind of go, okay, now the time is now. I'm going to do it. I'm going to make it happen.
Exactly. And one of the other interesting things to think about was, the terminology "I was made redundant," which it's very kind of me focused, but the truth is I was redundant. The business
Yeah.
deemed that the role I was in wasn't needed anymore, and
Yeah.
that's because the business wasn't doing so well, and I get that. But that's not where I want to be, where I'm not useful, where I'm not contributing, where I'm not an integral part of the team. So it was, yeah, in the end, really positive.
That's such a good point. And actually, I was actually writing a post about this afternoon for next week, that the terminology we use is exactly as you say. I was made redundant, but you weren't. Your role was made redundant.
Yeah.
It's actually a very separate thing, but the language that we use around it, I'm sure, contributes to people's feelings of it does feel personal. It feels, like I did something wrong, or, I wasn't good enough or whatever, but it's absolutely not the case. It's not a reflection on the individual. It's a reflection on, perhaps it's a period in time, perhaps it's the economy, perhaps it's, the business you were in, as you said, wasn't doing so well. They've restructured, they've downsized. It feels very personal, but it's actually not about you. So, well, I'm pleased that something very positive came from that
Yeah.
experience, and here you are, kind of a year later.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's a lot, but what have you learned from the first year? Are there things that have surprised you? Things that you were expecting and turned out to be true? Things that you were expecting turned out not to be true? How's it been?
Yeah, look, I've learned so much. Without question, the biggest 12 months of growth in my career. And honestly, probably the most fun as well. So I guess some of the big things that I've learned would be, the business development slash sales side of it was my biggest hurdle, like my biggest fear, I guess. And it's never something that'll be super comfortable to me, but the way I made it easier for myself was my goal here is to help. I'm not
Mm,
trying to convince anyone to take on a service they don't need. People are really busy. They've got huge, important strategic agendas and they need help. If I can help, that's great. That's essentially my pitch. I can do these things. Can I help you? Let me know. Just being super clear and transparent about um, rates and charging has made that really a whole heap easier for me. I've also learned, which has been such a positive as thing for me to discover, is that I actually suit this kind of work. Like as you said, the difference between the big projects and the exciting stuff and the fast pace something versus the day to day, it's not a grind, but it's like the day to day pursuit of marketing is, yeah, I think I really suit um, the diversity of clients and the diversity of work and giving 100% for a client for a contained period. I think that
mm.
actually really suits how I work well. So that's been really cool to discover. I didn't really know that.
It's so interesting, isn't it? Because I think I heard it on a podcast recently. Someone saying, if you want to fast track your own personal development, start your own business. And I think it's so true, because you're forced to learn things that you know nothing about, and you're suddenly faced with all these scenarios where you're like, oh my god, I've got to figure this out. I've got no idea. But Google, YouTube, friends, anyone, like someone will help me. So there's all that of just, some of the day-to-day stuff that you're trying to figure out, but also, as you said there, the things that you learn about yourself that perhaps you didn't know at the start. I think that's always really interesting as well, just those kind of reflections of, oh, I love this, shorter, concentrated time frame of working with someone. And do you find as well that you feel you're doing more kind of creative work within that? Is that the right sort of way, the right terminology on it, do you think? Or
Oh, 100%. And there's creative in the creative sense, as in some of the projects I do are creative. We need you to
mm,
come up with a name or a brand or some copy, but it's also creative problem solving. Because as you said, when you're presented with this is the client, this is what they need to achieve. Do I immediately know how to solve it? No. So it's a case of, all right, how do we get there? And yeah, I call on my network. I've got sort of trusted advisors across different areas that I'll sling a phone call to and say, got this client, this is what we work on. Any thoughts? How would you approach it? And yeah, as in the same way that I am really receptive to that sort of network interaction, and I know you are as well. Everyone's actually pretty keen to help out a mate,
yeah.
like if there's not this, oh, I'm charging you 7-minute increments for this phone call. It's, yeah, sure, I'll give you some free advice. If I can help any more, let me know. Yeah, so definitely felt the power of a network behind me, and be creative, solve problems, help the client where you can.
Mm. It's such an interesting, you mentioned it before, but it's such an interesting, I guess, kind of mindset shift, that idea of what can initially feel like selling or, trying to push something onto someone to actually, I'm here to help. And if you've got a problem and I'm the right person to help you, great. If I'm not the right person, maybe I can, refer someone else that is. But just that kind of shift to how you think about it, I think makes a massive difference in your own head, in your own kind of thought process. Um, and also, I think what you say about the network is so true, and it's something that as you said, I've really enjoyed as well. Of just so many people that are working for themselves and don't necessarily have that kind of, people that they're seeing on a day-to-day basis, but are happy to have a coffee, pick up the phone, have a chat, offer some advice. And I think you don't, certainly I wasn't necessarily expecting that. And it's really nice to,
Mm,
it's a bit of kind of faith put back in human nature, isn't it? That there are people out there that want to help and are happy to, happy to be that what's the word I'm searching for? Yeah, advice giver or shoulder to cry on if something's gone wrong or whatever it might be.
totally. Yeah.
And it's nice, as I said, to have a bit of faith in humanity put back.
And connect again. Like, there was a very isolated few years we all went through, and that's the other thing about the BD circuit. It's, in its simplest form, it's going out and talking to people.
Yeah.
I love doing that. Why is this scary? I love meeting people.
It's so true, isn't it? I was having this conversation with someone earlier in the week, and I was saying, you need to network more, and you kind of need to get out there. And she was like, "Oh, I don't really feel comfortable doing that." Or, but I'm like, okay, how, just think about it a different way. It's just talking to people, sharing your knowledge, being curious, asking them questions, and having a chat. And that's not scary. But yeah, we put these kind of, I guess, labels on things, and suddenly it becomes a really scary thing, like business development or networking or something that people don't want to do.
Exactly.
um, I'm sure you've been asked this question a lot and you're probably sick to death of it, but I'm going to ask it anyway. The name, Pigface,
I love this question.
such a good
Yeah,
name.
I
It's
love
such
this
a great
question.
name.
So the origin of the name, it almost sounds made up. It's so ridiculous, but I knew, okay, so I'm like, I'm a marketing consultant. I've got to have a good name. If you're not marketing your own business well as a marketing consultant,
Yeah.
something's going right. So it was my last hurdle. I was like, everything else is in place, but I need a good name. I had a working title name, but I was like, I don't think it's quite right. And some months earlier, I had been at a train station in Melbourne, and they had Pigface, the plant. It's a Australian native succulent growing there. And I just grabbed a vine, took it out of the ground, really weird on the train ride home with a big vine of pig face with me. I got home. I'm no green thumb, but I thought, I'm going to see if I can cultivate this. Cut it up into 10 different bits and just shoved them in the ground throughout my garden. And every single one of them took. It was just the simplest plant to cultivate I've ever touched. And yeah, some months later, I'm sitting in my backyard having my morning coffee, looking at these 10 different bushes now across the garden. I thought, geez, these guys love to grow. And then it just kind of came to me. I was like, hang on, Pigface Marketing. That's not bad. That's pretty good. Loves to grow, distinctive, memorable. So I
Very
quickly,
sticky.
yeah, sticky. Exactly. That's what I was looking. Check the URLs. I was like, oh my God, this is available. How is this possible? So there it is. Yeah.
It is a great name, and as you say, it's not just the name that's so clever, it's the tagline and the fact that the tagline is integral and related to the thing itself. It's very clever.
Yeah. The stickiness is remarkable. Like that's from a great name or a great tagline. Like people who I haven't seen in years, who've maybe only seen me online on social media, will catch up and they'll say, how's Pigface going? So
Nice.
really landed, which I'm really stoked with the name. And I love telling the story because it's a good one.
Yeah, it's a great story. That leads nicely actually into the next thing I wanted to talk to you about, which is storytelling and kind of brand storytelling specifically. What what do you love about brand storytelling? Why is it something that you enjoy doing so much?
It's a great question. I think it feels like discovery. I really truly believe there's always one there. I mean, there's probably 10 different stories there, but what's the best one? What's the best one that makes this person or this brand or this company sing? Like in marketing, people often talk about a unique value proposition, which I think can be a bit misconstrued because it's impossible for every business to be unique. Like many businesses don't need to be unique, they just need to be the best. But it's about finding what's unique to you. So what's something that's excellent about your offering, that's the best way to tell your story, the best way to elevate your pitch to the marketplace. So, yeah, it's discovery. It feels like mining. It feels like just hunting around looking for that something that connects with people. And a story, I've been really deep diving into what story is. And a story is something that moves people. You start here, you go here. So, what's the thing about your particular story that will move other people? So I just think I really enjoy it, finding that. And I love seeing the way it connects to the founder or the CEO or whoever it is, because it's really hard to see for yourself. Like it really is. It's just a bit of a quirk of human nature is that we're not good at seeing what makes us special. Because I guess we probably see all the problems as well, and we like mired in the complexity and the detail. So I really do think it's easier for an external person to take the time to listen, to ask all the right questions for someone else to find that special story that's going to present you in the best way to the people that you want to help.
It's so interesting. Just as you were saying that, it struck me. It's actually very similar, and I think the same point is actually true of coaching, because I
Yeah,
think it's the same principle that when it's you, you often can't see it. And in the same way, if you sometimes can't see your strengths or you can't see the thing that does make you unique in a sea of 100 marketers applying for a role, what is it that makes you different? And it's, yeah, just something, I guess, about human nature, isn't it? We just can't see it for ourselves. And
it's
it's that
exactly the
same,
same.
yeah,
It's
same
exactly the
principle.
same. It's personal branding. And I do, I don't know if I find this comforting or slightly concerning, but I do think that especially in a busy life that we've built for ourselves, people hang on to just a couple of things. You meet someone in a job interview, and having listened to them talk for an hour, there'll be a couple of things that hang in your memory. That'll be the guy that worked at Oxfam, or guy that, was a circus performer. It's like things, just those couple of little bits of branding stick. And so you, as the storyteller, have the power to choose what bits of branding you could give out. So
Yeah.
it's worth strategically investing in. This is, once we've had this meeting, or once we've done this pitch, or once we've run this advertising campaign, these are the things that will be left in the memory of the people that saw it or the people that listened to it.
Mm. Do you find, because I think that there is such a, I was going to say over the last few years, and I don't know if that's the right time frame or not, you tell me, but the kind of prevalence of storytelling definitely seems to be much more at the fore. I think people seem to much more easily understand its importance. When you're having those conversations, and perhaps it is a founder or a potential new client, and you're saying to the founder, you're asking all these questions to try and uncover the story. Do you still sort of meet resistance? Do they still sort of think, "Well, I don't wanna be in this story," or "It's the business, it's not me." I'd imagine you still get that type of, pushback or comments?
Yeah, look, I think your time frame is probably about spot on, although I'd say probably over the last decade, it's
Mhm.
landed, as in this is actually powerful. It's not just running ads. That might be a part of it, but it's telling a story. There's an element of cringe that I think comes with that. There's like, oh, okay, storytelling, in that a lot of people are out there doing it and maybe not doing it well. But yeah, look, I met with a founder yesterday with a startup, and he said to me, we're going through the pitch deck, and he said to me, I know that this is about storytelling, but it's like a nightmare for me. He's like, I know that I have to get up there and tell these VCs why I think this
Mhm.
product is so important, or why I'm doing it. And I know that we need to tell a story about why the market needs this product. But to him, it is a nightmare. He wants to be in product and code and, revenue figures, but the storytelling part is really difficult. Um, but yet he knows it's important. So that's probably a nice place for me to play, because you need it, but it's hard.
Yeah. What's the solution in that scenario? Like, if he just really doesn't want to be the center of the stories, what can you do?
Well, the solution is just get help. I guess that's where I
Mm,
can help. I would always, founder-led brands are the best brands, certainly in the
yeah,
startup space. So it's going to be harder for the business to thrive without the people involved. It doesn't necessarily have to be the founder, but without the people involved being
yeah.
the face of it, certainly in the early days. But it's doable. But if it's truly the last thing on earth you want to do, then employ or hire someone to tell your story, because there's other ways you could do it. You could find ambassadors or influencers, or just really slick campaigns. There's
Mm.
ways to do it, but it's got to be done. And he knows it's got to be done.
Yeah, yeah, maybe that's it. It's not, maybe not his face or his voice kind of plastered all over it, but it's still, but I could, yeah, I guess it can still be that, and not actually, sorry, it can be that, but still his story, but he doesn't have to necessarily be the one out there telling the story and being the face and all of that kind of stuff.
Exactly.
I can see why you love it so much. I think it's such a, they are such interesting problems to solve, and the fact that you're kind of constantly looking at different elements of that must be, yeah, must be really fun.
Yeah, it is really fun, and that's another great learning from a year in business. It's like, oh, this is fun. I like doing this. That's cool.
Yeah,
It's really,
who knew?
really lovely to just love what you do, everything that comes with it. So that's a great place to get to after a year in business.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think also, going back to that point about business development, that I'm sure that comes across as well, when you're having these conversations with people, that it's not, oh, and let me tell you about this, it's you can see it on your face, you can hear it in your voice that you're, super energized to kind of talk about it, and it's something that you're excited about and passionate about. It's really nice. And it's, yeah, I think infectious to the people that hear it.
100%. Yeah. People can feel that. They know if you're having fun or if you're enthusiastic or if you're confident, all of these intangibles absolutely written all over your body language and your face and your emails and everything. So it comes across.
Yeah, absolutely. Flexibility as well is because, as I mentioned at the start, you're in London, our first international guest. Is that something else that you've kind of enjoyed about working for yourself, having that flexibility to be able to base yourself in London for a bit? Or yeah, tell me about that.
Yeah, it's a huge side benefit. It probably wasn't a driving part of it, but my wife is also a freelancer of sorts, so she travels for work, so I can go with her, which is really fun. We can do it together. And there's flexibility in terms of, yeah, I can do my job with my Australia clients here from London, with a little bit of um, time zone lining up, but also I can pick up London clients. So while I'm here, so yeah, so it's a really great thing that maybe COVID has given us for everything it took away, but
Mm.
flexibility to be able to work from anywhere is pretty cool. I guess it comes with pros and cons in that sometimes, an inevitable part of doing what I do is there's a gap between assignments, or there's crossover when you have a
Mm.
really intense period because this project is still running and this project's already started. So definitely it's a mindset shift in terms of how I work. It doesn't have to be 9 to 5 every day. It can be 2 weeks off because I happen to have landed in a gap, or okay, it's going to be a lot of coffee over the next few days because I got 3 projects at once. And you just got to learn to roll with that.
And the time zone is not your friend at the moment.
It's not the best, but it's doable.
How have you found that in terms of picking up at London clients? Was that something you kind of purposefully set out to do while you were there? And how have you found it? What's the reception been like?
It's not a purpose pursuit actually. It's just, people are increasingly quite global in the way they work. An Australian former colleague who I've been stayed in touch with is working with a very dispersed network of people, and some of them are London based. Also, just the purest form of networking where you're chatting to someone. It's like, what do you do? I work at this startup. It's like, what do you do? Oh, well, I'm a marketing and storytelling consultant. It's like, maybe we should have a chat. So, that
Oh,
networking doesn't get more pure than that.
no, no, absolutely. And I think also just that the network of people, again, something I'm always saying to people, like the network of people that you've worked with over the years, that you've kind of built trust with, that they know you're good. And I think that's always the kind of the first point of call. And if they've then gone and moved somewhere else, that gives you a whole new market that you don't have to kind of attack cold, because you've got that point of entry.
Yeah, a word of mouth is the best way in, hands down, best form
Absolutely.
there will ever be.
Absolutely. That and a really great name. Anything else over the course of the first year that you've kind of, I don't know, maybe something that surprised you, or that you weren't expecting?
Probably just a learning that is quite big in my part of my reflections for this year is, um, I felt that, for what I was looking at in my this is a couple of years ago me, there's quite a few things that I was seeking in the job I was in or the career I was in, um, which I think in some respects made me feel like I was really picky about the job I wanted to do, which is almost like framed as a bad thing. But it's like, well, I should be picky because a lot is important to me. It's the work I'm doing. It's the purpose or the mission of the organization I'm with. It's the conditions and the way I can work, and it's the culture and the people I get to work with. Like, these are all so important. And job hunting is tricky if you've got like that really high bar to hit. But I also, having been through, particularly in the startup world, which is a very volatile space, through
Mm.
no fault of anyone's, but like funding comes and goes and business can fall off a cliff or it can surge. Things can change so rapidly. And so many of those things that were important to me were out of my control. So
Yeah.
that's okay because, you can only focus on what you can control. But starting up my own business allowed me to shift some of them into my hands. I've been at organizations that had this beautiful, brilliant culture that then changed overnight. And
Yeah.
it's really frustrating, but it's entirely out of
Yeah.
your control. And I didn't want to be the kind of employee that once something changed, I move and start hunting. So I thought, there's too much that I need to go right, and there's too much that I can't control whether it goes right. So for me, starting up Pigface Marketing was a way to shift some of the things that were important to me into my domain.
Mm. That's a really interesting reflection, and I think it's so, you use the word picky, and absolutely not. As you said, those are the things that are, if those are the things that are important to you, why would you not be picky? Like, you're not gonna you're not gonna go, "Oh, actually, it's fine. Like, I'm not that bothered about that thing." It's if it's important to you. And I think perhaps maybe, someone might use that word if they haven't thought about it in that way, if they actually haven't got that level of depth to their thinking of what's important to them. So then perhaps if they're faced with someone who's saying, well, it needs to be this and it needs to be, and these are the reasons why, and it's a very, considered, well thought out thing, maybe, maybe that's where that word comes from. But yeah, I think, who else is going to care about it as much as you? Like, you're the one that needs to be driving it, because it's, it's you, it's your career, it's you spend the most amount of your life doing that thing.
Yeah,
It should
it's
be
worth
important.
carrying. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Final question, Charlie, which I actually don't think I told you about in advance, so I'm just gonna spring it on you, and hopefully you have an answer. When you kind of look back over the course of your career, is there something that you know now that you wish you knew then?
Oh, that's a great question, isn't it? Yes, there is. Um, I think for a lot of my career, I was adapting myself to fit into what I thought I should be in that role, about what a marketing manager or a head of marketing looks like and talks like, and the way I should conduct myself. And I guess what I know now is that what the unique mix of experience and personality and skills and motivations that I bring, that's something that makes me, I guess that's my unique selling point. So the fact that I maybe over index in this area and under index in this area, it's really important to be aware of it, but lean into it. Um, so yeah, I wish, in some respects, like, I don't lament it, but I do wish that maybe 10 years ago I was a bit more confident in the unique balance of things that I brought to the table and saw that as an asset rather than, oh, I should be a bit more focused on this and a bit less on this.
I love that answer, and yeah, it resonates for me as well, because I've been through that same sort of thing, and I wonder if sometimes, I think sometimes it comes with a little bit of age and just experience of, when you're younger and you probably are just trying to fit in a bit more, whereas as you get a bit older, certainly I have, just like, I'm not trying to fit in, I'm just trying to do good work, and help people, and focus on the things that are important rather than kind of fit in a particular box. But yeah, I love that answer. And I think it's so interesting in a broader kind of career perspective, because I think so many people, without realizing actually, I think when they're sort of applying for jobs and things, that they are not differentiating themselves. You know, they are using the same sort of language, the same sort of approach as everyone else. And
Yeah.
actually, if you think a little bit more about how you stand out and how you differentiate yourself and what are the things that do differentiate you, it actually stands you in really good stead. Even better if you can wrap all of that up in a really nice story, because then people will people will remember it even more.
Well, it's a great point with recruitment, isn't it? Like Google, what does a good cover letter look like?
Yeah.
So then
Yeah.
all cover letters look the same.
Yeah, and the
Yeah.
same language and, even the same words. It's so interesting as you know, over the years read thousands, tens of thousands, like people almost, you know, not just the same words, but the same phrases, the same, and it becomes so repetitive, which and the flip side of that is that it's actually quite easy to stand out. You just have to not do that. You just have to not do what the other 200 people that are applying for that role are. But yeah, I guess back to your confidence point, it takes a little bit of confidence to just kind of stand out and be like,
Yeah.
hey, you know, I'm doing it a bit different.
Confidence and experience and yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for well, not getting up too early, hopefully, but starting your morning in this way. I really appreciate it.
That was a really fun chat, and I do always love discovering that crossover between, the common threads between career and coaching and marketing and storytelling, and yeah, it's really nice to explore. So thanks for the chat.
You're very welcome. And as you said, there is quite a bit of commonality there.